Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. And joining me for this episode is Brian Hickey. On this instalment of the absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at the latest issue of Paul Allor's G.I. Joe comic, issue number 7. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, shall we? The origins of Cobra and G.I. Joe revealed, secrets are exposed in this vital flashback issue, witness the rise of Cobra from tech giant to military juggernaut, and discover how Scarlet, suffering from the realities of a life of combat, found her way to the burgeoning G.I. Joe movement. And obviously in the comic is a different blurb that says, Cobra has taken command of the world. To fight back, G.I. Joe recruits civilians, training them as spies, assassins and saboteurs. But the leadership of G.I. Joe is made up of combat veterans with years of experience on the front lines. Two of these veterans are Duke, a beloved leader who was shot down in the streets by Cobra operatives, and Scarlet, the Joe's battle-hardened training instructor. Before Duke's death, the two shared a deep history as comrades in arms. Now, we have here, obviously, the usual team. We've got writer Paul Allor, artist Chris Evernhouse, colours Brittany Peer, letters Neil Utake, and editor Bobby Curnow. And another aspect to this comic, which is actually really, really interesting, is the fact that Paul Allor went above and beyond to basically get loads of kind of, I suppose, like do loads of research. Because, I mean, we're talking about a comic here which deals with very sensitive issues like, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder, how soldiers coming back from war, how they kind of integrate back into society and so on and so forth. And because of that, he's kind of taken on a load of consultants, Peggy Willoughby, API US Department of Veterans Affairs, National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, and US Army SFC, retired, Dwayne K.L. France, LPC, Patricia Watson, PhD. So lots of kind of people involved on this one, and it's kind of interesting, isn't it, because this is something that G.I. Joe never really kind of dealt with in the past. It's always been very much I'm not going to say glorification, but it's certainly not something that they've ever delved into.
Well, you know, you look at the comics from the past, from the 1980s,
yeah,
even some of the more recent comics that Larry's putting out there, it really is, you've got kind of classic action adventure.
Exactly,
you've got your bad guys, you've got your good, the bad guys are really bad, the good guys are really good. There's no grey area, and it's just lots of fun, lots of adventure, lots of excitement, a bit of drama, and they're great comics to read. They're a lot of fun, you know, they're really enjoyable. Well, Paul Allor, what he's continuously done on this particular one is to take it into places where other writers don't go. He looks at the horror of war.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before, you know, in previous issues where the Joes go in to kind of try and recruit the Dreadnoks, and you see the devastation that's going to happen in their hometown, and the loss when they try to evacuate the survivors from the Cobra attack. There's lots of our characters are dealing with kind of regrets from kind of failed missions.
Yeah.
And here we're looking at a very real scenario for combat veterans and for anybody who suffered any kind of trauma in their life, of how they come to terms with that and try to recover from that. And this is got to be one of the standout issues so far in this run.
God, it's amazing.
It really is brilliant. And I would say, before we even get into this, I would say if you haven't got on board with this particular run yet, you could pick up issue number 7. You could read that. It works as a standalone issue and is a great gateway into this overall universe that Paul Allor has created. So I mean, it's top class. It's very different in terms of what you would expect from G.I. Joe, but that's nothing new when it comes to Paul Allor's universe.
Absolutely. Well, let's get stuck into the comic covers. We've got 3 for this one. The first one obviously is the Chris Evernhouse one, and obviously you've got Scarlet front and center. She's holding almost like she's holding hands in a kind of sense with Duke, where it looks either like she's on by his bedside and he's kind of, you know, passing away. That isn't the case and doesn't happen in this issue or in general. Or they're just, you know, clasping and kind of like, you know, in solidarity, kind of like, you know, joining the team, etc., etc. And you can see that Chris has done an amazing job of really putting a lot of kind of deep, almost like kind of like the colouring as well by, I guess, Brittany Peer. It just says art by Chris Evans, so it could just be completely by Chris. In which case, I don't know the ins and outs of that exactly, but either way, the colouring is done in such a way that's kind of bringing out a really dark undertone to Scarlet's psyche, in a sense, isn't it?
It's beautifully illustrated, and the first thing that strikes me is that the look, the expression on Scarlet's face. This is somebody who's lost and is holding on to Duke's hand for dear life.
Yeah. Filling up as well, like her eyes are tearing up as well, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you talk about the colouring there. Again, this is something that we see throughout the run of the covers, particularly the ones where Chris does all the artwork himself. You've got this kind of this cold light and this warm light, which maybe it shows kind of two different aspects of the particular character's journey over this part of the story. So this is a top-notch cover. I'm a huge fan of Chris Evenhouse's work. This is a beautiful piece.
Absolutely. I also like the fact that at the bottom of the page you've got that kind of scratched away, almost like disappearing aspect of the page. Like almost like Duke is disappearing into the ether in a sense, and she's kind of holding on to him as much as she can. So that there's a lot going on here, which obviously I suppose you can take whatever you want from those issues, but really, really cool cover. Moving on, we have the retailer incentive, and this is a really nice one. It focuses on the Baroness. It's by Sarah Richard, and this is quite a nice one as well. It has like a very Aeon Flux vibe. I'm not sure if you ever saw that back in the day, Brian, but that kind of like it was on MTV in the UK, and it was like a really kind of crazy animated cartoon, but the visual I'm getting here is very much of that vibe.
I'm not familiar with Aeon Flux, but I do particularly like this cover. It gives us, there's a scene in the cover. I think it's as we go through kind of Scarlet's story, there's one panel there, July 4th, and all the Cobra banners are out over whatever city it is that they've captured or taken over. So this is obviously kind of linking back to that. The Baroness does get a very, very brief cameo, I think, in one panel where she's looking at a map of North America, and you can see how much territory's been occupied by Cobra.
Yeah.
But again, I've got the sense that she's perhaps kind of looking out a window, and that this is the rest of the city reflected in the glass. So like we're on the outside of the glass looking in, and we've got this smoke kind of billowing around the window. Maybe it signifies the aftermath of some big conflict or something like that.
Absolutely, and I love the colours on this. It's really, really vibrant and cool, and I'm a big fan of that one. And then we have the KRS Comics exclusive. This is the final cover we're looking at today. Art by Ariel Diaz, and it's again the Baroness against a wall with loads of bullets and the Cobra logo behind her. It's all right. It's pretty a kind of standard Baroness image, really, with two automatic machine guns. Classic
kind of Baroness, and a bit of a kind of a manga anime type of influence to it. But pretty nice cover, beautifully executed. As we've seen a lot of Baroness covers between this run and say the Real American Hero run, this will be one of the better ones in my opinion.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a nice one. And then obviously let's get into the actual issue then. So it's called The Soldier's Heart, and it basically follows the story of Scarlet before she joined G.I. Joe. And, she's just come back from war where she was a soldier, and she is really struggling, mentally to reintroduce herself back into society. Any noise she hears is, and what I've noticed in the issue as a running theme is whenever something sparks in her mind that is like a reaction to like a noise or something, the colors change to this kind of negative green with a pink swash behind it on a white background, and it's really, really visually impressed. Like it literally does make you jump almost as you see those panels. It's amazing, isn't it?
This is a really nice touch. The way we so obviously we have these kind of flashbacks from the present day to these events that kind of trigger flashbacks or memories from her military past, maybe recent military past. And this kind of negative image, which kind of triggers that, or signifies that in her mind that she's come out of the real world and back into the past.
Yeah.
It's just really well done. It's not something that you would see executed like that in many comics, because you only get one panel and it's just enough to tell you that she's in a different place, and it's not a good place. There's lots of subtleties built into those images as well. So on that very first page, Scarlett's just in the alleyway outside her apartment or whatever, and then we get this kind of negative image flashback, which is juxtaposed right beside
the actual reality,
the actual reality image. But the subtle difference in it is that she's reaching for a pistol inside her jacket,
which isn't
the
there.
Flashback.
Yeah, exactly.
It's little things like that, and it's just superbly executed. And just as a general comment on this page, I love the way Chris Evenhouse uses perspective. We have this shot looking, the angle is like from below looking up, and you see all the beautiful architecture as it kind of rises up behind Scarlett, and then birds in the sky. It's just a brilliant piece of illustration.
And paper floating around, it's amazing. So as we go through this little aspect, 5 years ago, we started on March the 3rd in Atlanta, Georgia, where Scarlett is living. And, she goes through these little aspects where she's, having these horrible flashbacks whenever she does anything. She opens the bin to throw the trash out and she imagines it exploding. And then she's like, it's all clear, Shayna. Of course, all is. And, and throws the trash in. And just as she does that, a car pulls up, door opens, she turns round, leg comes out. And then again, you see her flash, like you see that kind of flash panel of her pointing the gun at whoever's coming out of the car. And then you go back to the reality and she's got nothing in her hands. And she's just like, but how are you? And then it's Duke on the next page. So he's come to basically see how she's getting on. He said he heard that she's having some issues kind of coming home. And that's where we get this kind of, she opens up a little bit to Duke as to what's been going on.
This is just super stuff here. We're only 3 pages in, and it's actually brilliant to see Duke reintroduced to the story. So, if you roll back to issue number 1, a couple of pages into that, Duke is executed by Major Blood, which is a big shocker back then. So to see him reintroduced into the story, albeit in kind of like a flashback or backstory, it's great. I've got to say that made me feel really good. Kind of getting into this, just to see that kind of familiar face and one of our heroes who hasn't had a chance to really play a part in the overall story. It's nice to see him in here. In this scenario, he's coming out of concern for an old war buddy just to check in, see how she's doing. And in fact, it's more than just a check in. He knows that she really needs some help, and he's there to provide that.
Exactly. And what I found really, really powerful about this particular comic was the way that the PTSD is dealt with, the way that her kind of journey of that, kind of mental health kind of repairing, as it were, which isn't really something that happens. It's more that she's learning to cope with what's going on. He's turning up to kind of give us some advice at the same time that we're getting this really interesting kind of way of dealing with it, really well written as well by Paul. In the background, we've got Cobra and how they came to prominence and how they came to power from a tech company to this actual issue. So Scarlett's got the news on in the background, and it's one of these things that's happening, but no one's paying attention to it, because obviously Scarlett and Duke are having this kind of head-to-head, this deep, meaningful conversation about Scarlett kind of returning to society and being mentally a better mental well-being. And something that's really, really interesting about this, really subtle, is when they have the conversation, she's kind of very dismissive of everything. She doesn't really want to go to therapy. She doesn't want to do anything like that. He's about to leave, but before he does, he kind of says, okay, well, if you're not going to be in, if you're not going to do this, you're not going to go through the process, then I'll just leave. And as he's about to leave, he kind of he takes the magazine out of the pistol that's on the side, and that's such a subtle little kind of inclusion, but it's almost like, I don't want you to have an easy way of maybe putting a bullet through your brain kind of thing, That's a really nice touch there. So if we kind of roll back and look at this
kind of this scene that's been set up. They've met out on the street, then they go up into Scarlett's apartment. And I really love just how the apartment is kind of laid out. The TV's on. No one's really paying attention to the TV. The newsreader is just kind of giving you the latest on this incident that's happening over in Transcarpathia, not even on US soil. And we learn that kind of Cobra bats have seemed to have malfunctioned, and there's concerns because you've got bats in like the militaries of more than 70 countries. So you get to see how wide-reaching Cobra's reach is. What I really love as well is that we see above the TV on the back wall, we see there's a portrait. We don't get to see who that is in that portrait there. And there's two kind of images or two pictures in frames either side of that. Again, we can't really see what's in there.
Yeah.
But a bit later on, we're going to get that's going to be revealed to us what that is.
Yeah.
You have the banter between Duke and Scarlett. He's really expressing his concern. He's kind of offering her some sort of avenue to help with her healing.
Yeah.
And she is very resistant, and she comes out and says maybe it might have been better if I'd actually died.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that Duke kind of, very subtly goes over to the counter where there's a pistol lying out and removes the ammunition from it. And while he's doing that, Scarlett, seems to remember, well, I think I owe you one. In fact, I owe you more than one. And then he says, yeah, well, I'm going to call all my chips in right now.
Yeah.
And basically puts her in a scenario where, she's going to pay Duke back for saving her by going into therapy.
Yeah. And then obviously we get the therapy session, and what's really cool here is we get Psych Out, like an homage to Psych Out. Now, he is the character who's running the session. He's the kind of the therapist, as it were. And he is referred to as Kenneth, and that's obviously his name in the file cards, which I think is really, really cool and a lovely little touch in addition. And even the fact that he's wearing his green shirt with like this kind of check pattern on it, which really does kind of like it homages his actual kind of like almost like padded sweater with the kind of the segments on it, which is amazing. So that's a really nice touch, and I like that. So obviously she's in therapy, and she's very dismissive of it. And, there's a guy there who's really struggling to kind of, get back into society. And he's moaning about, like not having all of this choice of soda, which is kind of blowing his mind. Like he goes away for 5 minutes. When he comes back, there's loads of soda and he doesn't know which one to have. And it's just quite a cute little thing. And then obviously the next page, you see Scarlett shopping, and she's just confronted with all this soda, all these different options. So I think that was a nice touch.
I do really like this kind of group, this sort of therapy group, with Psych Out as kind of the counselor who's kind of leading this and kind of helping people to work through their issues. I really like the dude Roger, and he seems to be freaking out over the raspberry vanilla paoli cola.
Exactly, yeah. Paoli as well, which is the Crimson Twins name in this. So you're getting like these nice subtle hints that Cobra are taking over in all sorts of facets, governmental, military, and now kind of like, in commercial.
Consumer level.
Exactly, yeah. Which is really, really an intricate way of doing it, in really cute ways that Paul drops those kind of things in there. And again, what is really cool as we go through the issue is we get these relationships building. We get Duke and Scarlett, again, talking in diners and stuff. As the Cobra escalating news continues, we get her kind of warming up to Roger a little bit more. Even they have a conversation by the coffee machine. She goes through she's going through the motions of throwing the trash out. And as we kind of move through the issue on this, what's amazing is we start to see less and less of her flashbacks happening, and she's starting to integrate into society. She's starting to become mentally healthier, which is really cool. And then just as we think she's getting better, something really big happens.
I've got to tell you, I teared up at this point. She's, as you say, you can see there's less flashbacks. She seems to be getting through her daily life, without any kind of incident. And then she's coming into it's July 24th. So it's more than probably just over a year.
Yeah.
Since at this point, since she started her healing, she comes into a therapy session, and she's what, I'm going to try this vanilla raspberry paoli cola, Roger, and if I don't like it, I've got a whole case in the car, you can have that.
Yeah.
And bust into the room, and then it's broken to her. Psych breaks the news that Roger, was found by his wife and kids, and he's no longer with them. And it's the way
it's powerful.
The background is kind of drawn behind Scarlet. It's all kind of cracked and fractured,
and then just all black as well, isn't it?
All
as well,
black, and she's really devastated. She throws the can against the wall, and she said, "But I thought he was making so much progress." And Psych Out, reminds her that sometimes it's 3 steps forward and 4 steps backward.
Yeah, and then obviously, she attends the funeral, but kind of from a distance. Then she's drinking more. She's deleting all of the recordings that she was being asked to do for kind of for her therapy and all that kind of stuff, that to kind of talk about some of the things that happened while she was at war. The flashbacks start returning. And it's really sad. And then obviously we get the focus then on the fact that effectively war has broken out with Cobra, and we get a great shot actually on the news of night ravens and kind of like possible sky strikers or just military jets fighting each other, which is basically it's saying that fighting has broken out on American soil. And you've got people watching the news in a diner, all kind of fixated on the TV. And you've got Scarlet there in the same shot, just completely not paying attention, looking down, depressed.
Looking down.
Yeah.
There's so many kind of layers and of subtlety and richness in everything that's kind of illustrated throughout this particular story. But that shot on the TV, you've got the caption that you kind of scrolling across the bottom of the image, and you can just see on the left hand side, reaches American soil, and you can fill in the gaps here. The war that was happening over in Europe is now here on United States soil, and that possibly the USS Flag getting bombed by the night ravens.
Really cool that. And then obviously we get the call that she gets a call from Duke. They haven't had like a conversation, or they haven't been able to talk for a long period of time. He's obviously up to his guts in literal war, and this is where they're kind of they're having that back and forth again. He's like, I'm ready, I want to be one of you guys and everything, and he's like, not yet, Shayna, but you need to win your own war first, kind of thing. So that's when she starts, while all this crap is going on, she starts to kind of, repair what was broken after Roger passed away. And then you've got, right, let's start again. And she wants to get on there with a recording. And then we start seeing kind of like a series of quicker flashbacks of, like you said, Cobra Commander, Baroness, and I forget the other character's name off the top of my head. Do you remember it? Demon, was it? No, it wasn't Demon. Was it Demon? I think it was Demon. I could be wrong.
It's Demon, dude.
Apologies.
I think it's Demon.
But the three of them are looking at the map, and they're like you said, they're looking at what territory they occupy. They've got a huge amount of the West Coast there going into the Midwest. We also see a flashback of the bats attacking the Dreadnoughtistan. That whole situation in Indianapolis. And then obviously back in the therapy session, and she's kind of like starting to kind of become more vocal in that. And then we get, the flashback to Cobra taking over, and it's like, they've won. The streets are, everyone's kind of celebrating in the streets as the tanks run through, and Cobra emblems are on everything and flags and all that kind of jazz. Again, but you see that Scarlet seems to have turned a corner. Duke is in the middle of fighting Vipers, and she's throwing a trash out, but she has a relapse, but then she starts laughing. Duke turns up and she's like, what you laughing about? And she's kind of like, I just had a breakthrough. And you can see that she's beyond it now. She can deal with it. She can cope with it. And the two of them have another conversation. They have a beer, and that's where she joins the G.I. Joe team. And I just really thought that was such a really good way to end the issue as well,
Well, this is again, this is great to see Scarlet come the full way through this kind of recovery, and again, just the relief. You can see the relief in her face. Like the way the character has been illustrated is just, it's just brilliant. It's brilliantly done. But there's also a nice echo here. If you flash right back to the beginning of this episode, when Scarlet and Duke meet for right at the beginning, and they go up into Scarlet's apartment, that scene is basically redrawn again at the end, or no, the second to last page where they walk in, the coloring's very different.
Yeah.
The mood is a bit calmer in the image now when they walk in. The TV's not on. And then when you have that very closing shot at the end where, you know, Scarlett's agreed to come on board with G.I. Joe, or Duke has agreed to have her come on board with G.I. Joe, you get to see what that was on the wall above the TV set. And it's a photo of Scarlett and Duke, probably from a recent photo from when they were in military operations together.
Yeah.
And you get to see all of Scarlett's kind of medals and decorations in frames around that on the wall.
Yeah.
Showing us how much experience she has as a soldier. And I just thought that was a really, really sweet way to end this particular issue.
And I love the fact that their shadows on the wall of them clinking the beers, like you can see just very subtly that on the final page. Really, really good. I mean, this is an amazing issue. It is so powerful, really emotionally heartbreaking at times. And then obviously there's the sad undertone that in the current situation, Duke is deceased. So there's loads of depth to this. I think Paul did an amazing job in the writing, and obviously having a lot of consultants on the issue has really made for a fantastic comic. And when you think about it in like a theory way, you know, if it's just like, you know, them dealing with the mental health aspect, and obviously having that Cobra situation running in the background adds that level of action to it at the same time. So there's lots going on here. What about you? What's your overall, Brian, and what would you give it as a rating?
This is an amazing issue. Just go back to what I said right at the beginning. This is probably the best so far of this run of 7 comics that have been released, and really it doesn't pull any punches.
Yeah, that's a big point. Yeah,
it takes you to places that are dark. I did tear up at one point reading through this, and it was really touching when you find out that Roger is not able to recover, and recovery is not possible for everybody.
Yeah.
But it just makes Scarlett's recovery even more powerful. And it also gives context to the character of Scarlett, because over the first 6 issues, we see Scarlett maybe in not a nice light. She's a real ball breaker of a boss. And
you can kind of see why after this issue, can't you? Yeah.
Now you can understand that, you know. She's been really cruel to some of her, teammates on the G.I. Joe team. And when you get through this, you suddenly feel for her a lot more. You understand where she's been, and you've got a lot more respect for that character.
Absolutely.
After this particular issue, so it's hats off to Paul Aller, Chris Evenhouse, and Brittany Peer. This is an incredible issue. Not just the writing, which is awesome, the artwork, the layers, the detail in the art and the coloring. It's a magnificent piece of storytelling.
Yeah.
So in terms of marks, I mean, I've gone all 10 here, man. This is.
Oh, that means I've got I've got to come up with another Photoshop. But that's fine. I'm totally with you on that one, mate. Absolutely superb issue. Like Paul and the team knocked it out of the park, and I think it really is a nice, or as nice as something like this can be, almost like a love letter, if that's even a thing, to this kind of situation that people deal with all the time. Like it's just a very respectful way of kind of portraying it all as well. And I think that was one of the things when he mentioned that this was an idea that he was having and told me about the structure of the issue. I was very like, oh, okay, that's going to be difficult to pull off, but it's been pulled off and then some, for lack of a better term, on that one. But absolutely superb. I'm going to go the same as you. I'm going to go 5 on this one, even though you said 10. I just don't want to have to do another Photoshop of 10 potatoes. So yeah, amazing issue. Brian, thanks again for jumping on and chatting about this brilliant comic, and thankfully we've got quite a few coming up still. Issue 8 is not too far around the corner for Paul Aller. We've also got obviously a Real American Hero. Dead Game 2 is going to be happening soon, so hopefully we'll have a bunch of comics to continue reviewing. Thanks very much, mate.
We are spoiled for comics at the minute, so let them come thick and fast, and we'll get these episodes knocked out thick and fast.
Awesome. Thanks again, buddy. That's it for this installment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Brian Hickey. See you next time, and as always, full force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter at The Full Force, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/distantplanetcomics.
G.I. Joe fans, welcome to Cobra Convergence 5. Cobra Convergence is the G.I. Joe fan community's month-long celebration of G.I. Joe's eternal enemy, Cobra. Please join as your favorite G.I. Joe podcasters, YouTubers, photographers, and cosplayers present new Cobra content for the entire month of August.
G.I. Joe, the Full Force Podcast. Half the Battle, Special Mission Force, Comic Tropes, Toy Polloi, Plastic Battles, Scorched Earth Creations.
Every day in August, we'll spotlight a G.I. Joe fan creator with new Cobra-related content. That's a dose of Cobra every single day of the month.
Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast. Merry Mercenary Cosplay. Order of Battle podcast. Cobra Island. SEO Toy Review. MacDowell. Mate Myler. Fun School Roni.
The full lineup of creators is now available at hcc788.com. Make sure you subscribe and follow each one so you don't miss anything.
Joe Motion Videos 82, JLS Comics, What's on Joe Mind Podcast, The Human Mechanism Mark II, Green Yeti 907, My Side of the Laundry Room, The File Card Podcast, Real Hector Canadas.
We want every G.I. Joe fan to get involved, support the fan community, and show us your creativity. You will find instructions at hcc788.com for how you can join the convergence with your own Cobra creations.
Joe Fan 82, Jay Bond, codename New2Vero2, Painted Plastic, Joe Colton Cosplay, Hooded Cobra Commander 788.
It's time to turn the world blue. Cobra Blue. Go to hcc788.com right now and get ready for the convergence. Oh!